raid, which is just the execution of a search warrant, which happens hundreds of thousands of times a year across the country. Imagine if everybody got $230 million because their home or their office was investigated. But in any event, in his case, it's totally ridiculous because the Constitution says that the president is limited to his official salary in office. That's in Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution. It says his salary cannot be increased, it cannot be decreased, and no other compensation can be received. And he just wants a cool $230 million because he thinks the government is his piggy bank.
And at the end of the day, it's really important for folks, and Sam Stein reminded us of this yesterday, is that most of his legal fees were paid, the $230 million or however much, were paid by the super PAC that was created and people donated into. So really, the money ain't his to begin with, but I will digress.
His donors have already paid for it, essentially.
Exactly.
Now he wants to go back to the taxpayers to put more money in his pocket.
And not to mention the fact that there was a lot of tension at the time between him and his personal lawyers about whether they were getting paid and how much they were getting paid.
Exactly. I want to play some sound from your House Speaker, Mike Johnson, before and after he claimed to have read the New York Times report about the $230 million, but he still didn't know either way.
Yeah.
The Times is reporting the president is asking DOJ to pay him $230 million for his past cases. Is that appropriate, considering it's a department under his control?
I'm not going to comment on something I haven't read, so I'm not sure what you're talking about.
How comfortable are you with the president apparently seeking $230 million from the Department of Justice?
I don't know the details about that. I've just read it. I didn't talk with him about that.
I didn't talk to him about that.
Yeah.
That sentence to me is very telling and very important, because what it says is I was not told what to say.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if someone asked me a question after I read an article, I'm probably going to have an opinion about it. You probably would have an opinion about it.
Yeah.
I don't have to talk to the subject of that article to have formed an opinion in my adult brain.
Well, at least Trump's allowing him opinions sometimes, because Trump the other day said, I am the president and the speaker. I mean, there has never been a more humiliating subjection of the Speaker of the House of Representatives in American history than what we're living through right now. We haven't even been in session for a month. You know, the Senate at least is in session, but they just closed down the House and they've closed down the government, and they're trying to close down the health care of the people. And Mike Johnson says, I basically can't say anything until the White House tells me what to say.
There's a banner on the Agriculture Department website that reads, Senate Democrats have now voted 12 times to not fund the food stamp program, also known as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. SNAP, bottom line, the well has run dry. At this time, there will be no benefits issued November 1st. We're approaching an inflection point for Senate Democrats. They can continue to hold out for health care for illegal aliens and gender mutilation procedures, or reopen the government so mothers, babies, and the most vulnerable among us can receive critical nutrition assistance. What is your response to this statement and the Trump administration also continuing to use the shutdown and civil servants as a weapon against Democrats in a very unprecedented way?
Well, first, just a reminder, a message like that, similar to the sort of video that Homeland Security was playing at airports, is patently illegal. It's a violation of the Hatch Act. In no previous administration of either party would you see an administration or the executive branch acting in such a way. But Donald Trump does it for the same reason he remarkably tore down the historic East Wing of the White House, because he knows that he can get away with it, because he knows that under Republican control, Congress has ceased to be a co-equal branch of government and instead is acting like subordinates to this president. Now, specifically to SNAP, I want to remind everyone the root of this problem. A few months ago, in what the president used to call the big, beautiful bill, which has now become the big, ugly law, one of the most unpopular pieces of legislation to pass Congress in my lifetime, that delivered in it massive tax breaks, mostly skewed for the rich, and was paid for both through historic-sized healthcare cuts, but also $187 billion worth of cuts to SNAP, the largest cuts to SNAP in American history. Those cuts take effect November 1st. So let's not forget that regardless of the government shutdown, the reason why we are in this situation is because of that original sin of the big, ugly law with $187 billion worth of cuts.
Well, I'm really glad you actually provided that context, because there's also reporting that Josh Hawley is considering introducing a bill to continue to fund SNAP, and that the Senate leader, John Thune, is weighing actually bringing that to the floor as a standalone in the middle of this shutdown. If that makes it through the Senate somehow, are House Republicans going to vote for this?
Well, first, I mean, I give Josh Hawley partial credit, whether it's SNAP or Medicaid. He has said the right things, but the problem is we've never actually seen him then vote according to some of the things that he has said. I'm pretty skeptical that Senate Republican leadership will pass something that's completely contrary to what President Trump wants. If, however, that bill were to make it over to the House, I don't see any scenario in which House Speaker Mike Johnson puts a bill on the floor that isn't blessed by President Donald Trump. The reality is Mike Johnson does whatever Donald Trump tells him to do, period. That's the reason why, and I still can't believe this, for 5 weeks, the House of Representatives has been completely out of session. That is crazy. We have never seen that before in a government shutdown. Typically, it's the exact opposite, that we would be in session every day, including on weekends, attempting to find a bipartisan compromise. That's what should be happening now. But again, you have a Republican leadership in the House that is a wholly owned subsidiary of this White House.
Congressman, the reason that Democrats are refusing to vote to open the government is because of these Obamacare premiums. And I want to read something from the Washington Post from Friday that says that the average Obamacare premiums are set to rise 30%. It's according to final rates approved by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services and shown in documents reviewed by the Washington Post. The higher prices, affecting up to 17 million Americans who buy coverage on the federal marketplace, reflect the largest annual premium increases by far in recent years. There are some Republicans who've kind of mentioned they would be open to voting for, at least having a bill on the floor in the House and in the Senate that would protect or extend these Obamacare premium subsidies. But what are the actual conversations happening behind the scenes with Republicans about an actual bill? What would it actually look like? Are you hearing anything from your colleagues?
So the problem is there are no conversations taking place because House Republicans literally are not there.
Y'all ain't got phones?
They are away from Congress. There are certain people I've been texting and talking to. So yeah, some of that does still take place, but not nearly as much, to be clear, as when you're in person and you can go quickly grab someone. So it's a little bit of somewhere in between. I just want to correct one thing, though. Senate Democrats did have a bill on the floor in the Senate that would do exactly what you were describing, and it didn't get really any Republican support. The final thing I would say is that in my state of Pennsylvania, when we're talking about the Obamacare exchanges here, it happens to be called Penny, the increase we're looking at is not 30%. It's an average increase of 102%. So it really depends on in which state you happen to live.
Congressman, real quickly, what do you think the possibility of President Trump getting all of the leaders together at the negotiating table to come up with some kind of plan, some kind of deal to reopen the government?
Well, it would be nice if 1 month into this, President Trump woke up, realized there's a government shutdown, stopped playing SimCity with the White House and actually paid attention to this and got everyone together.
What you're witnessing right now inside the Republican Party is pure dysfunction. The cracks are no longer hidden, they're splitting wide open. Speaker Mike Johnson, once seen as the man who could unite the far right and the moderates, is watching his control slip through his fingers. Even his most vocal allies, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, are breaking ranks. Now, no one's calling her a hero of the opposition, but it's telling when someone like her starts pushing back against her own party's direction. Meanwhile, the moderates in the party are panicking quietly. Many of them are sitting in swing districts where just a handful of votes can decide their careers. They're looking at these extreme policy pushes, cutting food assistance, laying off public workers, hiking healthcare costs to fund tax breaks for the wealthy, and realizing this is political suicide. They're saying, how am I supposed to sell this to voters who are already struggling? How do I explain cutting social safety nets while giving millionaires another tax break? For a lot of them, especially in states like North Carolina, California, or New York, this isn't just a policy disagreement, it's a threat to their re-election. And that's why the pressure is building. More and more Republicans are signaling they want to strike a deal, even if it means defying Trump or Speaker Johnson. They want to stop the bleeding, stop the cuts, and move on. That doesn't mean Democrats get everything they want. The GOP will still walk away with some conservative wins, maybe funding for their security priorities or other right-wing demands. But one thing is clear, the American public isn't asking for higher healthcare costs or less food on the table. Even the business world is turning on them. Companies like Walmart know exactly what happens when families lose their benefits, spending drops. SNAP recipients shop there, and when their benefits are cut, so are profits. That's not ideology, That's economics. So when even corporate giants start to frown at Republican policies, the tide is shifting. What we're seeing is a party at war with itself, and the consequences are spilling far beyond Washington.